After my dad remarried, he neglected me and prioritized his new family, making me feel like a guest in his home. Am I the jerk for resenting him? When I was younger, I had a great relationship with my father. My parents split when I was an infant, although I spent the week with my mother and weekends with my father. My father and I were like best friends, and we had a set schedule. Every weekend we'd grab 5 Redbox DVDs to watch, go fishing, play soccer, and bike to a hidden playground near the zoo. I was also used to my father constantly having different girlfriends, none of whom lasted more than 2 weeks. The only one who stayed longer was a woman I admired, who was there for 2 years. She left my father when I was 10. Despite this, my relationship with my father remained unchanged until I was 12, when he met his current wife. This woman had 2 children, one older and one younger than myself. They moved into my father's apartment after just 2 weeks. My room was already small, but my tiny mattress and 3 small plastic drawers were pushed into the corner to make way for the daughter's bunk bed and dresser. Before I knew it, they began putting my bed in a closet while I wasn't present and frequently forgot to take it out when I came to visit. When my father moved into a larger house, the older sister received her own room, whereas I had to share one with the younger sister. Every weekend, the 3 small drawers I had were quickly reduced to just 1 because my younger sister wanted the other 2 for toys. I gradually began to visit my father less frequently. Things got extremely bad when my father got his girlfriend pregnant. After a year, they married, and I had no idea for a month because he hadn't told me. I also had no idea my newborn half-sister was born until weeks after she returned home from the hospital. To make his new family happy, my father began indulging them and stopped paying child support to me and my mother. His non-working wife cooks, cleans, and shops, while my father pays for her older daughter's college tuition. The younger daughter is the epitome of a 10-year-old Sephora child. My half-sister is still a toddler, but she is plainly spoiled and hates the word no. My father and I had a routine that is no longer in place. My stepfather has been with my mother since I was 5. Apparently, though I don't remember it, I once called him Dad, and as a result, my father told me not to love him like a father since he isn't my father. I believe this is why I began acting as if I despised my stepfather. I had no idea why I felt that way toward him, because he has always been nothing but nice to me. In recent years, I felt considerably closer to him. He feels like the father my biological father should be. Over time, my father began to treat me differently. He rants to me about his political opinions, conspiracy theories regarding aliens, and other topics. He also boasts about his new business and family. If I try to share anything with him, he gets upset and shuts me down, instead continuing with his own story. It appears that he now considers me a friend rather than his daughter. In recent years, I've learned that my parents' divorce wasn't because they weren't compatible, but because my father cheated on my mother while visiting his family in Canada. I am now 15 years old and have changed drastically from the person my birth father remembered. I used to enjoy the beach and soccer, but now I prefer music, reading, and writing. Since 2022, I have written and published 2 books, and I am currently working on the 3rd in my series. My stepfather believes in my dreams and loves me so much that he brags about me to friends and family, referring to me as his daughter. He also has a biological daughter, who I adore like a true sister, but she lives up north with her boyfriend, so I don't see her very frequently. Nonetheless, I adore them more than my biological father and half-sister, with whom I'm actually linked. My father blames me for not phoning him, but given how he has treated me recently, I don't feel like I owe him. I also go months without seeing him anymore, since I no longer feel at ease in that place, especially because the bed I sleep on is actually their guest bed. I'm a guest at my birth father's house. Because of this, I resent my father. I haven't informed anyone how I feel, so no one is calling me a jerk, but I'm wondering if I am. My father appears content with his new family, and I'm left wondering whether it's terrible that I'm not glad for it. Am I the jerk? Update 1. Hello. I wrote a post a few months ago about how my father has stopped treating me as his daughter now that he has a new family. Not much has changed since then, but here's an update nevertheless. Since my initial post, I've only been to Alistair's place once. It's safe to say that I'm just an uncomfortable guest in the house. I should begin by mentioning that whenever I go a few months without visiting, Alistair attempts to appear innocent. He phones me every Friday to inquire when he should pick me up. I never answer because he always calls while I'm in class or studying, so he phones my mother, but because he never asks in advance, I usually have plans on weekends with my cousins, friends, or just writing. as I'm still working on my third novel, which requires a lot of focus that I can't get at his house. Actually, I'm just going to name him Alistair. He hasn't been much of a father figure to me, unlike my stepfather. Anyway, my mother decided I'd go over to his house, despite the fact that Alistair hasn't paid child support in over 2 years, and I despise coming there. My mother suggests that I pay him a visit every now and then to keep him out of trouble with. She sometimes confuses me, claiming he's a deadbeat, but also that he's a loving father who deserves to be respected. However, given the circumstances, I'm very convinced nothing would have changed because I seldom visit him and he doesn't pay child support. Anyhow, in instance one Christmas, he purchased and wrapped a large number of new items. When I was visiting him a few weeks before Christmas, he drove to Walmart to get his wife some food. He handed me $200 and said, "Merry Christmas. Buy yourself something, and the rest can be used for child support or whatever." I purchased 2 books, but the remainder of the money, which was supposed to be child support, was far from what he owed. I've told my mother that I'd be happy if he lost custody of me and my stepfather adopted me, but she feels that's too severe, saying, "He's still your father. He deserves your respect and love." Now it was the weekend. I paid him a visit. From the moment Alistair picked me up, he only talked about his new family. He discussed the older sister and her boyfriend, the younger sister and her shopping, and my half-sister, who can now speak a little. I remained mute until he asked me about school. When I responded, he became upset and launched into a conspiracy theory rant. I ignored him for the rest of the drive. The rest of the weekend wasn't any better. The older sister did what she always does. When I visit, she locked herself in her room and only came out when I left the home or went to the bathroom to avoid having to talk to me. The younger sister had a friend over, and her friend threw her belongings on my bed and sat on it, because that is where she sleeps when she has sleepovers. Alistair's wife did a bad job of concealing her displeasure with my presence. She was often taken aback by my presence, because Alistair had not informed her in advance, so she couldn't argue. Alistair spent most of the weekend taking me and my half-sister to a playground, where she could run around with her friends. I sat on a seat to read, but I didn't have much time for myself, because Alistair kept leaving and telling me to keep an eye on my half-sister, who is a wild and fussy child. I am not a babysitter, and while I am wonderful with children, that doesn't mean I relish devoting my own time to caring for them when they are not my dad. I had to spend 2 days in either utter commotion or discomfort, and I told my mother that I didn't want to go over there anymore. She said everything was all right and that she would not force me to leave, but I don't believe her because she has said it before. I don't have someone to talk to about it, and the whole scenario is freaking me out. I don't recall my father ever being as happy as today, yet I still feel like I should be glad for it. I don't know what to do, so any guidance would be appreciated. Everyone who posted on my last article claimed I'm not a jerk and Alistair isn't acting like a father should, but he still reaches out from time to time and calls me his baby girl, whom he adores. I almost cry when he says that, because it reminds me of how we used to be. Am I overthinking this or overreacting? What shall I do? Am I a jerk for not being pleased for my father? You should inform your mother that the more she compels you to go to your father's, the worse your relationship with her will get, because she is not listening to what you want or how you feel. You should also tell her that you no longer trust what she says, because she has previously stated that she will not force you to leave, but she does anyway. If you can't talk to your mother, talk to your stepfather about it and see if he can help. Update 2. Hello everyone. It's only been a few days since I last posted. Since then, I've followed most of your advice and spoken with my mother about not wanting to be compelled to visit Alistair, my sperm donor, as most of you refer to him. Long story short, I'm not certain she won't keep sending me over to Alistair's place, but she did end up sending him long texts chastising him for not treating me properly and ordering him to step up and pay child support. He didn't respond to her, so I took some other advice and sent him a lengthy text outlining how I felt about his treatment of me over the prior few years. As soon as I sent the text, he called and shouted at me. He called me spoiled and overdramatic, stating it's my fault we don't have a relationship because I don't visit or communicate with him, and because I cited the unpaid child support, he accused me of merely asking for it. I almost sobbed throughout that phone call and ended up hanging up on him. He also wrote some angry text to my mother, but later that day, he left a voicemail on my phone saying, "Money is so tight for me right now. I'm completely broke. You are aware of my feelings for you, correct?" The trouble is, I know it's a lie, since I always see my younger stepsister posting TikTok videos showing off the Sephora and other expensive items dad gets. I believe I'm done trying. Some of you suggested I seek my stepfather for help. I wish I could, but when I asked my mother again if he could adopt me, she replied something that broke me completely. Apparently, my stepfather has stated that he does not feel he should adopt me. My stepfather is really nice and compassionate, but he is also incredibly non-confrontational, and he believed that adopting me would be a slap in the face. Also, to clear up any confusion from the comments on my last update, my parents' divorce was not due to his current wife. My parents separated when I was a baby, and Alistair resided in Canada, where he moved from woman to girlfriend before moving here when I was 12. Dad met and knocked up his wife, Alejandra, and married her without informing me until a month after their courthouse wedding. In case you're wondering, my age is 15. It feels silly that I'm experiencing this level of stress at my age, and I don't feel comfortable discussing it with anyone. I can't talk to my stepfather since he's usually working, and when he comes home, my mother is also around, which I dislike talking to. She often tells me I'm too young to feel the way I do. The last time I attempted to address my mental health with Mom, I asked if I could begin therapy, and she said therapists are stupid, and I should simply talk to her or pray to God if something was. I'm not religious, and discussing serious issues with her makes me very uncomfortable. It's not that I don't love her. After all, she's my mother, but she's quite intense and scary. My father has not contacted me again after his voicemail. Frankly, I don't want to think about him for a long time. If he suddenly understands how severely he has messed up with me and apologizes, maybe I will try to repair our connection. My stepfather may not wish to adopt me, but he still refers to me as his daughter rather than simply his stepdaughter, and I actually feel loved by him. I adore his parents like they are my own grandparents, and his entire family is kind and loving. I might post another update if anything else happens, but for now, I'm going to concentrate on school and my books. Maybe now that I understand Alistair no longer cares about me, I can finally focus on writing my third novel. I dedicated my first book to him, and I do not regret it. I dedicated that work to the father he once was. It's unlikely he'll ever read it because he doesn't think it's sensible for me to want to be a writer, but I don't care. I'm done. Thank you to everyone who offered advice and assured me that I wasn't a jerk. Update 3. There were so many individuals asking identical questions that it was overwhelming, so I didn't react to any of them immediately. But first, I'll answer those queries before moving on to the real cause for this update. A number of you suggested that I talk to a school counselor or whatever. The trouble is, I do virtual homeschool, and my mother works from home a lot, so I'm honestly too terrified to try it. Plus, even if I talk to my counselor without my mother present, I don't trust adults to keep such things private. I know that seems silly and worrisome, but it's just how my mind works. A number of you also suggested that I bring up the therapy issue with my mother again, but I know it won't work. My mother does not believe in treatment and feels that praying to God or having her preach the Bible to me will resolve everything. As for my stepfather, I adore him and see him as my genuine father, even if he refuses to adopt me. But he's also no help with the treatment issue because he constantly agrees with anything my mother says to avoid argument. But I'm doing well right now, and I believe things will improve soon. I believe this because I'm confident that my mother will eventually petition for sole custody and court-ordered child support. When my parents split, they arranged for custody and child support amongst themselves. The agreement was that I would spend weekends with my father, and he would pay my mother $100 per week. I believe my father just kept that commitment to keep himself looking nice until he could complete his legalization procedure in the United States, as he was a Canadian immigrant. When he was legalized, he stopped paying child support and began indulging his new family. Anyway, I visited my father's place last week. This time, my mother did not compel me, and I chose to go because I wanted to give my father one final chance. He took me up from my mother's place, and we weren't even down the block when we started fighting. I was excitedly telling him about my business idea of making book boxes and selling books with DIY necklaces and hand-painted bookmarks that match the book covers. He called my concept dumb, unprofitable, and a waste of money and time. It was an hour's trip to his place, and he became political or upset at everything I said. When I told him I was thinking about applying to institutions like Harvard or the University of Chicago in the future, he became enraged about all the dangerous Cuban and Mexican immigrants in Chicago. He also claimed that Harvard is a waste of time and only famous because rich people go there. I ended up roaring back at him, telling him that he couldn't be so arrogant about non-white immigrants when he was once an immigrant himself. Also, I've never understood why my father is so bigoted toward Hispanics. despite the fact that both my mother and his current wife are Latin. He went on one rant after another, and I was so tired of it that instead of remaining silent like I usually do, I objected. Because of this, my father spent the entire weekend talking about my bad attitude. I told my mom about everything. I believe the final nail in the coffin that prompted my mother to seek sole custody was when I informed her about my father's rant about the differences between men. I ended up memorizing and writing down everything he said, then texting it to my mother. I implored her not to talk to him about it, but she was furious with him. Here's some of what he said. 99% of women want to latch on to rich men. Nearly all women are greedy and unloyal. Men don't like successful and independent women because they're prideful and bossy. It's more important for a wife to respect her husband than for him to respect her, or it's wrong for wives to make more than their husband, and so much more. He smiled and added, "But you're the exception, pretty girl. There's so much more that happened just last weekend, such as him saying that some of my guy friends aren't real because they're gay and attempting to convince me that my summer volunteering opportunity in the Dominican Republic is a bad idea because the people there are different despite the fact that my mother's family is." I won't go into every annoying thing he did, but I'm finally done. This was his final chance, and he wasted it. I simply wanted to mention that I'm quite sure my mother isn't sending me over there anymore. She spent the entire morning looking for my birth certificate, wondering if she needed it. She wants full custody, and if my father paid child support, it would greatly assist me prepare for college. He currently owes a significant amount of child support. Also, I didn't include the names of my book in the postings because I didn't want a bunch of internet strangers to see my social media tags on the back of the book, but I will share the titles with anyone who directly messages. If anything else happens, I'll most likely post another update. Hopefully my next report will come after we've been in court. You are not the jerk. Divorce and parenting are difficult. Your biological father sounds like a jerk. He is entirely failing you. I understand why your mother and stepfather want you to establish a relationship with your biological father. It is one of the things parents are urged to do throughout divorce because it is usually better for the children. If your parents obtained a court order granting your biological father weekend visitation, your mother could face legal consequences if you did not visit him. Your stepfather cannot adopt you unless your biological father's parental rights are dissolved by a court, and if your biological father challenges it, things will get messy. Your stepfather's reluctance to undertake such a legal struggle while you are still considered a minor makes sense. I'd wager that it has nothing to do with his affections. He expresses his affection for you and your position in his heart every day. He is already your father, so you don't need him to adopt you. Please do not let his fears about the legal situation make you believe he loves you any less. I'm delighted your mother is going for both full custody and child support. Your biological father has to be held accountable. I'm so sad that you lost your biological father. He may be alive, but he is no longer the parent he once was. However, keep in mind that you played no part in this. He's just focusing all of his energy on the woman who, let's say, meets his physical wants and leaving it at that. It's a regrettably prevalent issue. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.